It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You could find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting, either through my website, emailrevealer.com. The best way to get a hold of me is email me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. I'm really excited about our guest today. It's Dr. Jean Douthwright. She's a professor emeritus at RIT, which I think is Rhode Island.
No, it's Rochester Institute of Technology.
See, I screwed up already. Rochester Institute of Technology. And she was part of the effort to get the CIA off of campus. So Dr. Jean Douthwright, can you tell us about yourself? Who is Jean Douthwright?
Well, I grew up in Western Massachusetts, and I lived in upstate New York, and I worked at RIT for 37 years as a professor. And I also was an advisor on campus to the Community for Nuclear Awareness, the Community for Peace and Justice. And so actually it was my students who got me into all of this, and I just want to thank them for it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that, how you got into all of this. So how did the students get you into this?
Well, what happened was in February of 1991, just as the Iraq War was escalating into a ground conflict, our president, Richard Rose, the president of the university, announced that he was taking a sabbatical to serve his country, and that was all that we knew. We then had a student report that in the newspaper, and then later there were two people from the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, a Gannett newspaper, who published articles about RIT and the CIA. And Jennifer Hyman, who was a investigative reporter who had come over from South Africa. She immigrated to the U.S. from South Africa with her two children after her house was firebombed. And I think she was the one who really got all the publicity out. She wrote 80 articles about RIT and the CIA. In fact, we had a student who she crashed and went into the psychiatric ward. She had told her doctors about everything that was happening with the CIA, and they thought for sure she was crazy, and she did have some issues. So the next morning, the doctor came in and said, "Please don't read the paper for the next few days." It just kept coming and coming and coming. One of the students in the Community for Peace and Justice, a fine woodworking student who worked in the School for American Craftsmen at RIT, he came up to me and he said, "We have to ask Dr. Rose to resign. We have to get him to resign." And I said to him, "Well, David, we can do that." I said, if you guys choose to do that, we can do that. I said, but if that doesn't mean he's going to resign. And he did resign that spring of that year. He resigned from the university. I don't think too many things changed. I think all the people were moved around, and I think all of this is still going on at the university. It's not it's not secret anymore. That Rose wasn't recruited to go in the CIA. He asked to go to the CIA for a sabbatical, and we realized later that RIT had a long, pervasive relationship to the CIA, and the people in the coalition felt that having the CIA on campus recruiting students, we found out they were doing a lot more than just recruiting students. It's antithetical to the goals, methodologies, and values of higher education.
Let me slow you down just a little bit. First of all, how did this young woman discover that Rose had volunteered to work for the CIA during this Iraq War?
She called him. She got a number and got a hold of him, and he said that he was at the CIA. Kathy Wagner at the Democrat and Chronicle published the article that he was at the CIA. And then Jennifer Hyman, unbeknownst to us, came to one of our rallies. And after the rally, we had a press conference, which she didn't take part in. She didn't ask any questions at all, but she came up to students after and started asking questions about what we knew. And we didn't know a whole lot. There were a lot of rumors on campus. There were rumors among the faculty, the administration, the students about the CIA on campus. And we found out that we had a memorandum of agreement that had been written up by the CIA, and they basically ran the imaging science program at RIT. The imaging science program was very important to them for all the technological uses that it could be used for. There were also, RIT also does a lot of work. The photography department at RIT is the #1 photo school in the country, and they had done work on the U-2 plane, taking photographs.
Oh, then this has been going on for a long, long time.
Right. And
well, then how could you be a professor there and not know this?
They didn't tell, and none of it was public. None of it was public. It was all kept secret.
And I guess you didn't have like the mindset to say, like, to be suspicious and kind of notice, hey, what's going on here? You didn't notice that?
People were, but nobody had any real information. We didn't have any documentation to prove anything that we were saying.
Okay, then one more question. Now, when this young lady she spoke to Dr. Richard Rose. Is he a doctor or professor? What would we call him?
He was a doctor, I think.
Okay, well, we don't know, so Dr. Richard Rose. Now, when she spoke to him and she confirmed he was CIA, now I know that there are laws.
He confirmed that he was at the CIA. He didn't consider himself CIA.
Gotcha. Okay, but now there are laws against outing an active CIA employee. Were there any issues with that?
No.
Okay, no. That's interesting, right?
We never had any.
Okay, so you discover all that. Go ahead.
When he was coming through his career, when he went to one of the places he worked at under the Nixon administration as an assistant secretary of defense.
Okay.
And then he went to the University of Pittsburgh, and he became allied with a person, I think, who became a very good friend to him, Andrew Dougherty, who was Air Force, and he's a former member of the CIA. He was a public member of the former CIA group that exists, that Phil Agee belonged to, and some other CIA former officers. And Andrew Dougherty was really the brains behind everything that happened. Some of the people who came in to help us, when they saw that he was previous with the Air Force, they said, oh, yeah, this is the guy that, look at what he's doing, because he comes in with a good background. Most of these people are CIA when they do this. And he was absolutely right. Some other things that we found out was that we had a research corporation that was off campus. It was across the street from campus. And there were about 30 faculty, staff, and students who worked there. And the students were either being vetted for the CIA, being given projects to work on, or they were actually using these students to do some of these projects. They were doing projects with how to make documents and how to make good forged documents. They were learning how to print money. The CIA is well known for creating inflation in countries by dumping huge amounts of money.
Whoa. There was a private company nearby the school.
It was the Rochester Research Corporation.
And they were training students that were your students, people that you were walking past every day, to create phony documents and to create counterfeit money. Right. And there's no law against that? It's not a law?
No, no one knows what you're doing. You can go ahead and do it. So, there were rumors on campus about this. I think there were students who were speaking about how they worked and the kinds of things that they were doing. We found out through the investigation from the reporter, Jennifer Hyman, we found out that they were using the woodworking program that this particular student that I mentioned earlier was in, and they were putting listening devices into furniture.
Oh, my God.
The idea the students were told was that the CIA used this to build another piece of furniture that looked like something that was already in a facility, and they could put a new one in with a listening device in it.
This is insane. I had no idea about any of this. And you could just imagine, you could probably identify the students that were making the phony documents, because they were probably all grad students, PhD, with phony diplomas, right? Who knows what these?
A lot of them were undergraduates
with fake IDs, right? Getting into all the bars.
Yeah.
Incredible. And then and on campus they were making the furniture with the microphones.
Right. Well, I don't know where it was being made, if it was done in the woodworking studios or not.
Well, okay. So what else? Incredible.
And then I found out later that my department head, I didn't find this out until everything was pretty much over, but my department head, I was in the biology department, and my chair, Dr. Paul Hafner, he had been on the faculty governance, what was called the faculty council at that time. He was an officer, and the officers that year wrote a letter to Rose asking him what was happening on campus with the CIA, that people had heard a lot of rumors. And Rose wrote back an innocuous answer that, there was nothing going on. And I realized after I had talked to my chair, and I said to him, what should we do with this? This is craziness.
Yeah, where do you go?
And he said to me, well, go to 60 Minutes. But anyway, it was just incredible. I mean, it got worse and worse. One of my other colleagues in my department, one of his children, a young woman, went for an interview with the CIA, and they started asking her questions about her sex life, and was she interested in women, and she's a very straight, religious young woman, and she got really nervous, and she left, and they told her she could come back and try again, and she came back and tried again. It's just unbelievable.
Wait, I missed that. Try again to do what?
She interviewed with the CIA. She went down to Washington and interviewed with the CIA, and they gave her a lie detector test.
Okay.
And asked her and lie detector tests really can't be proven to work. They don't work really. But she got so nervous when they were asking her some of the questions about her choices sexually, her sexual preferences, that she got so nervous she just couldn't answer any more questions.
Right.
And so they told her she could come back the next day and try again.
Oh my God. Okay. So then, now you wrote some letters and stuff like that. But then, how did you? And you went to Dateline. You said it was.
Well, my boss had said to go to 60 Minutes.
60 Minutes.
Did contact them later, but they never carried anything about the story.
Well, of course not. Yeah, but who did you go to get this story out? Because we know about it. The New York Times printed a story about it.
Well, it was Jennifer Hyman who got it all out. Right? And she wrote the 80 articles, and she was a runner-up for the Pulitzer Prize. And she was smart. She understood what was going on. She said to us after the press conference we ran that February of '91, she said, do you have any documents? And I said, no, we don't have anything. I said, we did get some lists. And she said, well, would you share this with us? And I said, well, let me check with the students, because they're the ones who are really at risk with this. So we got all their approval before any of this was given out. But the faculty had started meeting with some of the administration. There was a committee that was set up. I requested it. I was on the faculty council that year. I was an officer, and I asked for a investigation by the faculty council. And the chairperson came back to me and said, we can't have this committee unless we have it made up half of the people on the committee are administrators. And I said, well, I don't want to do that. And she said, do it. This is the only way you're going to get this committee, is to do that. So what happened is one of them at one of the first meetings passed out some lists of all the contracts on campus for research. And he had 2 copies of everything, 2 versions. And one version had all of the CIA contracts taken off. The other one, which is the one he passed out to all of us, and I think he was shocked when he realized what he had done, it didn't say that it was CIA, but it said Washington, all the CIA programs. This was a printed out Excel spreadsheet, and all the CIA contracts said Washington, so it was kind of easy to figure out which contracts, the kind of things that they were doing. And again, most of it was imaging science. There was the printing department was still around then, and it was a very well-known printing program as well. So that program, the photography program, the woodworking program, those were some programs that were really impacted quite heavily by the CIA presence.
When you started to discover all this, did you discover this a pattern going on at other colleges too as well?
Yes. There's many other schools that had similar things going on. In fact, the whole covert action September, fall of 1991 issue was about all of the different schools. And one of the things that helped us was working with some of these people. Some of them came in to help us to look at some of the things we had, and they gave us a lot of good ideas. And then we also had, I think we were really fortunate to have a really good group of people that a lot of us had worked with before. There was a group of students from RIT and from the city, from the Rochester area. It wasn't just RIT students, but they were activists for peace during the Iraq War, and they did a lot of art programs and art demonstrations to talk about the CIA and to talk about the war. So they were really amazing. The students who were part of the Community for Peace and Justice were also just really, really wonderful. We had an American Association of University Professors chapter at RIT. The faculty, we were working to get our salaries increased because we were paid so poorly. And it was just a really incredible group of faculty from the AAUP chapter who helped us out a lot on faculty types of issues. And then there were a couple groups in the Rochester community. One of them that still exists is Metro Justice. That's a group of people who have been organizing since the early 1960s, I think it was. Saul Alinsky came into Rochester to do some work on trying to get blacks jobs at Eastman Kodak. And Metro Justice wanted to join with that group. It was called FIGHT. It was all African Americans, and they wanted to keep the group black and have black members, which made a lot of sense to me. And so Metro Justice set up a separate organization to work and support FIGHT, and it's gone on to do a lot of other things in the community. Right now, they're working on trying to buy out Rochester Gas and Electric and make it a community company that the city owns, the electric company.
Yeah, it really is incredible that we have any privately owned utility companies across America, that anybody would be making a profit off that kind of stuff. Warren Buffett coming into Nevada, buying up Nevada Power, and raising the rates so outrageously. But it seems to me like even this coalition you put together to stand up against the Central Intelligence Agency, okay, and the U.S. government. This is like a kind of a ragtag coalition of activists, well-meaning. What?
It was.
Yeah,
it
right.
Was.
So
it was.
I'm sure you suffered some repercussions for your efforts here.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of. I was the person when. Rose came back just after classes ended in the spring, and I was in work, and I heard that he was doing a press conference, and I went over, and he didn't announce it to the public at all. He did it for the press, and he was there to say that he had done nothing wrong, and it was packed. People had been waiting for 3 months for him to come back and speak. The coalition had demanded that he come back and speak. He refused, and he came back on the first business day after graduation, and the campus is pretty empty after graduation. So
right.
he did that to not have to face people. But the place, it was so busy. there were so many people that they had to put televisions, monitors in other rooms for people to go in and see him speak. And I remember standing up and I said to him, Dr. Rose, we want to request you to resign from RIT. You've done something that's, this is very un-American what you've done. And I got booed.
Really?
Did I get booed by the people there? Yeah, a lot of the people on campus, first of all, just really believe that what your government does is something that you should support. There were a lot of people who were and still are making a lot of money off of grants for these types of projects and so on. So it was a pretty interesting place. We also had a system of open mail folders. For example, in our college, in a hallway, we had mail folders where we could put student work, or they could put it in there to get to us if they needed to. We could put memos in for students if we wanted to get a hold of them. And what happened after this press conference is the students started getting all kinds of stuff in their mailbox, in the club mailbox. It was just a mail folder in an open hallway, and people were leaving things there. And one of the things that we got a copy of was a report that was written by RIT, by Andrew Doherty, that assistant to Dr. Rose, who was former CIA, or former intelligence officer. I don't know if he was CIA, but he was a former intelligence officer. And a report called Japan 2000. And it was an incredibly racist, horrific report about Japan and what the U.S. needed to do in order to compete with Japan. And when that became public, the story went international when that became public. It was about a couple 100-page report, and supposedly written for the CIA by Andrew Doherty and some other people who met to do that. I think Chalmers Johnson was part of writing one of those reports.
Wait, so you're saying that for some reason, after this, in the students' open mailboxes, they started receiving copies of this racist Japanese report. For what purpose? Why would they want the students to know about this?
Well, they wanted the students to publicize that this was going on. People who knew that this was going on. My assumption was that people were angry about this. I later found out that the Faculty Senate had requested Rose to speak about these issues, and he declined. He refused. And I think people were very angry knowing what was going on.
Wait, so this was to expose this racist report or to get the students behind it?
To expose it.
Expose it. Very interesting. So, and who do you think was behind that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I have no idea.
We don't know.
I have no idea.
Okay. It's not a deposition. Okay. You don't know. Okay. Let me ask you a question now, too, because I've been dabbling in this kind of research, and it seems to me like the University of Maryland, okay, appears, well, it not really appears. You can Google it. It's like an NSA, National Security Agency, annex.
So is RIT.
Yeah, right. For NSA?
Right.
Really? Yeah. And that's why out in the open, because Edward Snowden worked at the University of Maryland. And it seems like they recruit their students with these contests and stuff like that. They win the contest and they get all this kind of college funding. So now, wouldn't these students that were going into RIT, they were already in the bag. They were already on the team of the CIA and the intelligence networks when they applied.
I don't know if that was true. I don't think the students were recruited until they were in their programs at RIT. I don't think they were brought in. But later, yes, there were also rumors, and we found out later that it was true, that they had a curriculum, recommended courses in the liberal arts programs. The liberal arts program was creating some classes for these particular students. And I don't know very much about that, except that these students were required to take certain types of classes.
Okay, and how would they know to pick those classes? Like they had to be recruited in, they had to be funneled in, right? Before college, recruited.
Advisors, they must have had advisors who were advising them what to do.
I wonder.
To a young kid, I mean, this is kind of exciting to have an agency like that interested in you. Another kind of blip on all of this was RIT has a separate college, the National Technical Institute of the Deaf, which is it's funded financially from the U.S. government. And we have a lot of deaf students in those programs, and those students can come into regular RIT programs and receive an RIT degree if they, like anybody, complete everything for the programs. And those students there were high numbers of those that were hired by the CIA. And the only reasoning that we could come up with some of this is that they tend to be, a lot of them, when they show up for college, for example, they're just wild and crazy because they're kids who haven't been allowed to go out and experience things a lot. They're fairly immature, not in all cases, but some of them are very immature emotionally, just from not having been able to receive a lot of communication. Others, of course, come with really good backgrounds that families or schools were able to provide for them, but they can't hear also. So,
well, did you ever think maybe they wanted them because they were lip readers?
Somebody else brought that up. It could be.
Yeah, because you're watching a video and there's no audio, from across the basketball court, you're watching the lips. You need those lip readers, and I guess you need a lot of them too, right? This is just fascinating the way, and it's interesting how you said too that when they're being recruited in, I wonder if when they recruit in basketball players, from the college, like the high school basketball coaches get a kickback when they recruit a kid for a college. I wonder if they have that same thing in high schools, picking out intelligence operatives out of high schools.
I don't know.
It's just because it's so elaborate. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you said that there was NSA 2 at RIT.
Right. There's RIT is one of those NSA schools also now. So the NSA has done the same thing that the CIA had been doing, but in a much more public way. Right. I mean, there's huge amounts of money. It's up on every school that has it. One of the people who was involved with the NSA at RIT was a faculty member in my college, and they did a lot with them because of mathematics. They wanted them to get a lot of mathematics, so they were very interested in math majors with certain types of degrees. So the NSA is huge now, and they're running a program just like the CIA did with having an officer in residence.
The largest employer in the state of Maryland is the National Security Agency. I think they have a parking lot with like 40,000 parking spaces. Just insane. But there's a lot of spying to do, right? You got to do a lot of spying. Now, what about, was there any indication that if they have these recruits and they got these kids, interns, like work in college, that they were utilizing these kids for actual operations? He show up at these locations, fill up these auditoriums, that kind of stuff?
No, we never were aware of that at all.
Anybody ever come to you and talk to you off the record?
No. I wasn't really doing any investigation. That was what the reporter did. So.
Right. Hey, where is this reporter? What is she doing now?
She's retired. She lives in Pennsylvania right now.
Fascinating. Incredible stuff.
She's incredibly brilliant. Just incredibly brilliant. And I think the school and Rose were very naive and not very they weren't very skilled at trying to keep anything a secret or there was so much that was already out and information that people could get, and that was a lot of it was given to us, and we were very public with the things that we did, and we tried to of course, having a lot of artists in the group, they tried to do a lot of interesting things for demonstrations. One of our demonstrations was we had a press conference to cut the ties with the CIA, so we all had shirts and ties on, and we cut our ties off. And those things all got you a a way to get on TV. The TV news likes something that's quick, easy, and that's visual. So these students were just incredibly gifted at coming up with things to do that would get the press to come to our press conferences.
Oh, yeah. I was actually, I grew up in New York City with the Yippies, Youth International Party, and Aaron Kay would throw a pie in somebody's face, to get on TV, and he'd show up at one of the political debates, and he hit Abe Beam with a pie in the face. So we would, put a little theater, and to get on the news and get on TV and stuff like that. And very interesting. So this was, what else did you were talking about this stuff about the microphones and the chairs and this phony document company across the street. Anything else like that?
Well, one of the most important documents that became public was a memorandum of agreement that that RIT had with the CIA. And it was interesting, one of the deans who saw this, he was the dean of graphic arts and photography, so it was his college at that time that had the imaging science program, they had the printing program, and they had the photography program. So his college was hit quite heavily by all of this, and he stated to the press that when he had first received this memo, he sent it back to the president, and he said, "This is not education. This is training. What you're doing. We're not doing education. This isn't appropriate at a university to be doing these types of things." Rose, in May, when he came back, he insisted that the CIA wasn't involved in any way. They didn't influence programs at RIT because that relationship would be improper. And when we saw the memorandum of agreement from 1985 that somebody made public to the press, this memorandum of agreement said that they would help write the PhD program. It was RIT's first PhD program in imaging science, and it was very clear that this program was being developed for the CIA. And I think that was when people really started to become angry because they realized that RIT was committed to tailor its curriculum and to be responsive to certain defined specialties of the CIA. And the beginning of it, one of the parts of it was to establish the program leading to a doctorate in imaging science.
Yeah, it would seem like it was institutionalized. It was before and after Rose, right?
Right.
Where's Rose today?
He passed away a couple years ago.
I'm sorry to hear that. Okay. So Rose passed away.
He wasn't the smartest person somewhere. He was a pretty dull, not very bright person, but he did a lot to move RIT into a more national sphere than it ever had been. People just didn't realize, what that sphere involved.
Yeah.
And RIT, in that memorandum of agreement, they committed to tailor its curriculum to be responsive to those specialties. And
do you have a copy of that still?
Yeah.
If you can, send me that if you can. And when we put this up, we'll put that up in the Patreon so people can take a look at that. Quick question now. You mentioned how across the street they had this counterfeit lab over there training the kids to make counterfeits, and about them making these chairs with microphones in them and furniture. Now, was this like a training? Okay, we're going to teach you how to make these. I'm sorry?
It was called the Federal Training Center.
But do you think that this is where they were counterfeiting the money to insert in Iran and stuff like that and Venezuela in order to harm the economies? Or do you think they just taught them how to do it and then later on they would do it someplace else?
I would guess they did it someplace else, would be my guess. I just don't think that kind of thing could have been carried on. It was a pretty small building. And, of course they could have done it, but I don't think that it would have happened there. I think they would have taken it to, headquarters and done it or whatever.
Yeah, right. You'd think, right? But who knows if they're this embedded into this school? And you said there were rumors, so the kids were talking about this, saying, "Hey, I just built this chair." It's just incredible.
Yeah.
But I guess if they're all in on it, like if they're all been recruited and they all kind of know, "Hey, I'm doing this, you're doing that."
Yeah, well, I think what happened was when the reporter would get information, she would go and question people about it. And some people started spilling the beans. People spoke to her. That one dean in particular he had come from Eastman Kodak, and he was a really straight, I would call him a good guy. And he was furious. He finally resigned from the university during this whole process. He just said, I just don't want to be at a place like this.
But you say a place like this, though, but it seems to be...
Every university has it, of course.
Yeah, but it seems to be, yeah, right, if every university is doing this. Now, did you find schools that were worse than RIT?
Well, we really didn't look into other schools. I'm sure there are other schools that have a lot more sophisticated facilities, but RIT has, at that point in time, I'm not sure how it is now, we had the highest number of students from any school working in the technical areas that were hired by the CIA. In 1985, when the Memorandum of Agreement was written, there were 30 students from RIT who worked at the CIA already.
Wow. And just imagine, too, if they do go to work in private industry, if they go to work over at Facebook or Twitter, they're indebted.
Yes.
Right. So it's pervasive and all throughout society. Just what about, did you come across any private companies or industries that were doing the same kind of thing, grooming kids through there, training them for their own nefarious purposes?
No, we didn't look at any of that.
There must have been when this was hitting the papers and was getting news that other colleges came to you and said, hey, the same thing's going on here too.
Yeah, and that was how we got in touch. There was already a CIA off-campus group that had organized, and a young woman, Amy Mills, had written a book about how to organize to get the CIA off campus. And so we got that book and read it and tried to think about everything that we could strategically to, get more PR about what was happening with this. But once Japan 2000 hit, I mean, it was an international story. We were just getting calls from everywhere around the world. People wanted to know where they could get that report, because RIT refused to share it with anybody.
And then what ultimately happened with that?
They rewrote it so it wasn't quite as racist, but it was still pretty bad. It was still pretty bad. This was also tied up with, one of the, for me, the couple years before all of this broke in 91, I had gone down to Nicaragua because Rochester the Metro Justice started a sister city project to support the Sandinista revolution. And so it was pretty close to home with me. And a couple summers later, I was up working in the mountains, very, very rural area, the last road, the last place on the road. And one night, the fellow that I was working with, I was working at a women's carpentry cooperative and helping women to learn some math for doing carpentry. And this fellow that I was working with came with me and he says, gee, somebody just gave me $100 bill and asked me if I could explain it. Where are these campesinos getting this money from? These people don't even have enough to eat every day. Where did you get this money? And I said to Jim, it's probably money that RIT designed.
Well, it probably was. Yeah. Now, what about when you were traveling down to Nicaragua? Did you have any kind of problems with the government? Any kind of issues with that? Surveillance on you?
No, I never had any problems.
That you noticed, or you think there was no surveillance?
I didn't notice. I wouldn't have looked for it. I just didn't even think about it, really.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Okay. And you didn't notice like any infiltration of these campus groups that were trying to oppose the CIA off campus? You didn't notice any infiltration there either?
Oh, there were a lot of people on campus who were very angry about having anything question, something that the U.S. government is doing to save all of us. So there was a lot of anger. on campus.
Well, sure, especially if those kids were recruited, by the CIA to get there in the first place. But now I'm talking about like kids who would present themselves as being opposing CIA to be supporting CIA off campus, but they had ulterior motives and were possibly agents of the FBI or something like that, infiltrating the groups.
They could have. We never knew of any. I mean, we had a few kids who were kind of crazy, but I don't think we had any infiltrators.
Interesting too. And then
we have to be more careful with kids who would just go off and do something silly or stupid.
Agitators, agent provocateurs,
Right.
Yeah, they'll insert those people too. And you said people that were crazy, like a weaponized mental illness?
No. I think just kids who are, they're so interested in getting involved in something that they do something stupid. And, we just tried to tell everybody, when you're doing something, let people know about it. We used to meet most every night, and sometimes people would be going somewhere to meet people, and we wanted to make sure that they all got back and they were okay and everything was all right. They didn't get into any trouble, so we'd wait till we heard that everybody was okay till we'd go home at night. I don't know how my husband ever put up with me.
That's so true, right?
I was never home.
I know.
There's also been some other work. In 85, RIT built a new imaging science building, and the CIA director came for the inauguration of the building, and it was built for a microelectronics program. And one of the senators from New York at the time, Senator D'Amato, Alphonse D'Amato, he was able to get the money for that facility. And he was there that day, and he got an honorary degree the same day from RIT.
Fascinating. So pretty much like they're right in your face. Here's the CIA director here cutting the ribbon.
Right.
D'Amato and his associations back in New York, which were colorful to say the least. I'm from New York. Okay, so I'm pretty familiar with some of the stuff that went on back there. Very right in your face. Kind of like, so I guess there was a lot of naivete, right, that people didn't really notice, weren't paying attention.
Yeah, or they
weren't.
They weren't asking any questions, or they were just being ignored. I mean, even when Rose came back in May after graduation, people still didn't know too much about what was going on, and he still was saying that there was nothing wrong going on there. He tried to state at that point that there was nothing wrong that was going on, and he was pretty drugged up that day. I went over and spoke to him just before he started the press conference, and I realized he was taking something, a tranquilizer or something, to relax him. I think he was a pretty hyper guy, and he just wasn't in very good shape. And I just went up to him and I said, Dr. Rose, I just want to let you know that this isn't about you. This is about the CIA. I said, we're very angry that this is being done at a place that we work and where students are educated, that this is happening. And about 50 of our faculty and staff at that time had clearances with the CIA. And we got copies from people of all these lists. And there were a few people that refused to take part in this, and one of them was my dean in the College of Science. I don't know why, because he's also gone now. He died a few years ago. My sense was he would be pretty supportive of something like that, but publicly he refused to get a security clearance. He wouldn't give them the information that they needed to get security clearance. But almost all the deans had security clearance. People that we realized later were working for the CIA. They had positions at RIT, but they were pushing the CIA. People like the guy who ran the co-op office for students. RIT has a big cooperative education program where students can go out and work for a semester and come back for a semester. And it's a really wonderful way for students to get some experience before they get a lot of work done in college, because they come back and they understand why they're taking certain courses. They may not like them, but they understand why they're taking them because they've seen the uses of them in the co-op job that they've had.
Yeah, but also a great way to recruit and also insert insert your people into other situations. 50, you said 50 staffers had security clearances, and were these? You said there were all the deans. So these were
faculty and staff, both faculty and staff. Yeah.
Amazing.
Mhm.
And now, one more time, Professor Rose or Dr. Rose, Richard Rose. Do we know what he did when he went for that little sabbatical to go work for CIA? We know that for a fact. Do we know what his duties were there?
No.
Fascinating.
No. I frankly don't think he had any duties, because he was told that when people interviewed somebody at the CIA, they wrote an article saying that he wasn't recruited, and that he was told when all of this broke he should just be very open about where he was and not lie about it. He just hadn't been open and let the university know before he. I mean, when we went for sabbaticals, we had to write reports and get permission and have a final report when we got back, all for half salary for the year.
Now, did you have to do that for your trip to Nicaragua?
Oh, that was a personal trip.
Okay, gotcha. Now, what else? Okay, we're almost to the end of the show. Look, you've had a fascinating life. What else, besides the Nicaragua trip, what other kind of stuff have you done?
Well, my most recent venture was I read a book by a political prisoner, Susan Rosenberg. I think she was part of the Weather Underground.
Okay.
And I just thought it was amazing that they could put people in prison for so long. So I decided that I should visit a political prisoner. And I looked up where there were some political prisoners. I wanted to visit a woman, but the only women's prison in New York State is down near the city, Bedford. And there was a fellow at Auburn, Dave Gilbert was at Auburn. He was an organizer out of Columbia University way back. And there was another fellow who was in Attica, and Rochester's very, very close to Attica. So I ended up visiting him for about 5, 8 years. Once a week when I was around the Rochester area, I'd go to visit him. And he just got out of prison. He was in for 50 years, same age as I am. An amazing man, brilliant, just brilliant. There are so many people in prison that just shouldn't be there.
It is horrific. I have a friend of mine just got out, 25 years for pot in Tennessee. Yeah. You walk out of prison doing 25 years for pot, and you walk right into a free legal marijuana store. Imagine that,
Yeah.
The nightmare that must be. Now, what about the University of Buffalo? You come up with anything about the University of Buffalo? Because I stumbled on some stuff over there.
No, I haven't.
You haven't? Okay. Very interesting. Great stuff here, Jean. And you should write a book, man. A notebook.
Yeah, I'm not the writing type.
Well, you're a very good story.
In fact, the article that was in Covert Action, it's very funny because the woman who was the editor for the article, I wrote a very nice scientific paper that contained all the information, and she turned it into a beautiful story. So Terry Allen, if Terry ever listens to this, I asked her to be a co-author, and she said to me, "Oh, I'm not allowed to do that." Well, I called her up because later I saw an article where she was an author, and I said, "We ought to go back and edit that and put you on as an author. You were an author of that paper." So.
Well, Dr. Jean Douthwright, I'm sorry, I apologize for that. Dr. Jean Douthwright, anything you want to leave us with? We got about 2 minutes left.
No, I just always tell people to stay in trouble. It's well worth it.
It is so true. You fought the good fight. You stood up to the CIA, which is no joke. It takes a lot of courage. Thank you for your service to this country and to your fellow citizens here. Down there supporting the people in Nicaragua. That's always great work, too. We do appreciate your work here and exposing this situation. It's just a shame how I think it's gotten worse since then.
It's gotten worse. I think the universities are really tied up with military-industrial complex. There's just so much money to be made on weapons and spying and so on and so on.
Yeah, and now we have so much private capitalist data mining and data retrieval of our every movement, our every thought. We can only imagine what those...
I don't think we could have done this in this day and age as easily. I think that we were pretty naive. I don't think we were naive. We didn't think that anything much would come of it. I think we were stunned when all of this happened. It was just luck of being in the right place at the right time with a good group of people. and to have an incredible reporter. I mean, Jennifer was just amazing because Rose would deny to her that they started calling her she was an immigrant, and I forget some of the terminology they used for her, but it was pretty bad. They just kept trying to put her down as a woman from South Africa doing this, but she was a smart cookie. She was a real smart cookie.
But now, Jean, like at some of the faculty cocktail parties, no one ever came up to you and said, "Come on, Jean, you didn't know this was going on?" Like they didn't say it. Like, Jean, you're surprised by this? No one said that?
Oh yeah, people said that. I said, well, I'm surprised because it's unacceptable.
Yeah.
I mean, I just would go with what I believe. That's all you can do.
I got you. Dr. Jean Douthwright, thank you so much. I wish you had a book, that we could direct people to. But hey, what about you said that who was it? Terry wrote a book. Can we plug that book?
No, she edited my article in Covert Action. She didn't write a book.
Gotcha.
There's no book about it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jean Douthwright.
Thank you very much, Ed.
Good night.
Stay in trouble. Bye-bye.
Thank you.